You can't front on that. Yeah.
What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?
Hey everyone, Jason Bennett from PodCultHQ, and I'm here back with another episode of Whatcha Doin in Comics. And my guest today is writer, illustrator, and cartoonist, and award-winning comic creator based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They won the Prism Award for their science fiction comic, Oh Human Star. They've worked with clients such as Microsoft, Polygon, IDW, Macmillan, and has worked on a number of graphic novels and comics, including illustrating the recent Ghostbusters Back in Town with David Brewer and company. Oh, one other thing. Blue also teaches comics at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, so very well-rounded. Now they're bringing the visual splendor of graphic novel illustrations to the stage for the Children's Theater Company's production of Drawing Lessons, a play which will run from October 8th through November 10th on CTC's Cargill stage. Please welcome my guest, Blue Delliquanti. Blue, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Jason.
Very much so. I'm glad this came my way and got to do a little digging, learn kind of what you're doing here and your involvement in this. You're working on something pretty great with the CTC, and your involvement is you're not just there like as a consultant, you're taking a very active role in this production. How were you approached about this project, and what appealed the most to you that really said, you know what, this is something I really want to be a part of?
Yeah, this is a project I haven't really done of this type and scope before. A lot of it, I think, came down to where I'm based out of and what the comics community is like here. And so I'm based in Minneapolis. I teach comics at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and that campus is within like a 2-block footprint of two really big arts institutions. There's the Minneapolis Institute of Art, which is our like big museum, or one of them anyway.
Sure.
And then there's also the Children's Theater Company. So there's a lot of cross-pollination. There are a lot of like students that will, go work at one of those two, or will, be involved in projects there. And I was contacted by folks within the creative department at CTC to help find a good look for this project they were working on. This is a play that, as I understand, if I'm remembering correctly, is commissioned specifically for the CTC. And so the creators involved, Jack and Michi, the director and playwright respectively, they were really interested in incorporating a lot of visuals. Specifically, this is a play about a budding comic artist being mentored by a old and crusty comic artist. And so they really wanted to incorporate not only like the visual language of comics and someone learning how to draw comics, but also incorporate a lot of the like history of drawing comics, and make it a like realistic, comprehensive sort of journey through the like story of making comics. So I was brought in initially to consult and like provide some perspective on that, and then I eventually came on to the project as a contributing artist. Like I'm working with the creative team, with the folks behind the stage and behind the page to like help bring this story as they visualized it to life, which is really, really fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a really fun.
It seems like it, and that's something I found interesting when reading everything, that the performance will include like projections of live drawings and graphic novels. And I mean, it really goes, this play, normally people just attend and sit and enjoy, but it goes beyond being a performance to watch. It's something that really engages the audience. I mean, is that interactivity, a major component of drawing lessons?
Yeah, something that I think is interesting about the staging of it, and that we're still kind of early in the like staging and getting everything going, but the staging on the like stage itself is fairly minimal. Like we're not recreating a room through props or furniture or things like that. A lot of this is the actors like engaging with against a projection. And something that's really fun about that is it's not, one to one, 100% literal, like it's not meant to recreate a room, for example, like a classroom or a, living room or anything like that. But the audience is like taking in these images and especially like assembling a bunch of small images together to create kind of the like active role that a comic reader has. Like someone who's reading a comic is assembling a lot of images at once and creating a really like rich tableau in their mind. That's what makes
Sure.
comics feel so immersive. I find that you often do that with theater as well. It's like you're kind of doing that same kind of active, reconstructing in your head. So I really am looking forward to seeing how the actors like help immerse us in that world and doing that work that might otherwise be left to, like a lot of furniture, a lot of props.
Sure, sure. And it sounds like you're probably gonna have a pretty busy next 30 days or so
Yes.
as you lead up to it. I'm sure a lot of that's all going to come together. You teach classes on comics. Do you have any of your students that are going to be taking part in this?
In the production itself, I'm not entirely sure. There has been a lot of opportunities for me to like come across former students at art festivals, art comic conventions like in town. Honestly, we actually just had one a couple of weeks ago called Autoptic that is in the heart of downtown. And there were so many students who I initially taught. I mean, I've only been teaching like 4 or 5 years, but and
But even
that's enough
still,
time for
yeah,
students to go on and start their careers, start their practice. And that's been really fun to just like continue to be in the artist community and see all these like artists enter it and like make their mark in there as well. So I would really like to see more opportunities to see that cross pollination with theater.
speaking of that, so, and this is, I guess, maybe the comic fan in me curious, during these productions, either before or maybe after, and most likely after, will you be available after the performance to meet and greet people, can they pick up your work there and see, something else? I mean, how does that aspect, I mean, does that come into play at all?
I mean, I won't have a table with like my books out or anything like that, but I definitely am interested in attending like quite a few of the performances and see that see that production in motion. It would be really fun to like engage with, audience members afterwards to, see what they think, see what their like impression of the play was, or, I think it's really what I like about how this play has been done is that there's a genuine interest and like curiosity about comics, which is something that I think a lot of people like, especially here in America, like a lot of people like comics. They like stories that are inspired by comics. They'll watch a lot of like adaptations, like movie adaptations of comics. But, there's not necessarily a like understanding of how comics are made. And I think that kind of goes for art in general, right? Like I think a lot of people love the idea of creating work, but they have been discouraged at some point in their lives from thinking that they can make art or make comics, which is a huge bummer because that's something that I feel really strongly is that anyone can learn to make comics. A lot of us have that visual storytelling already. Like we know how to do it because we know how to read it.
Sure.
So what I like about how this play is being approached is showing people how easy it is to like pick up a pencil and draw and how to start and how to get into that practice like you're going to the gym. Like it's a exercise that anyone
Sure.
can do.
And I almost wonder if sometimes that's just because of how they were brought up, either
Hmm.
maybe with their family, but possibly in school. I know a lot of schools start cutting funding, the arts are one of the things that go. Creativity that allows that person to show the creativity that they have within them.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
kind of sounds like that is kind of the barrier that they've never been able to express what they do have inside.
Yeah. I
And
definitely
yeah,
think, yeah, I definitely think that's a big part of it is that, there are lots of barriers to access the arts, to practice the arts. Some of it with comics in particular, I think is a like it's a generational thing. Yeah, I think it's less prominent now, but like lots of people who are older than me, they kind of had this like discouragement from reading comics or from making comics because, there was this like belief that it's not as, intellectually stimulating as reading prose or like doing other kinds of things. And I think that's like been changing over the last 20 years, especially.
certainly.
But I think that is still like another barrier for people feeling like this is something they can do and this is something they can tell really amazing stories with.
Fortunately, it sounds like this is really going to put comics and the graphic novels in such a light that just kind of opens everyone's minds, especially in the audience there, to really
Hmm.
maybe even take get a good look and say, hey, this is something I can definitely be a part of. So when it comes to your involvement, come playtime, once the performance begins, will fans of yours be able to see like your fingerprints scattered throughout where they can say, oh, okay, that's reminiscent of blues work. Okay. I know that's something they did right there that, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, that's a good question because I feel like there are, there's components of my style that are probably recognizable to people who are familiar with my work. I mean, a lot of what I'm drawing is backdrops, and that's something that I found I like to do. One of the classes that I teach at MCAT is about, perspective drawing and like scenery and world building. So I put a
okay,
lot of effort
nice.
into those. Oh gosh, let me think. Um, Something that I don't know, maybe if you're like a former student of mine, you might recognize this, but not necessarily for my work. One of the exercises that I teach in a lot of classes, especially like entry level classes when people are trying to get over the, I can't draw thing, I do a lot of variations on an exercise that I think was started by a cartoonist named Ivan Brunetti. And a lot of it is just like drawing something as quickly as possible, like you like basically doing studies of a, let's say, like a shoe. Like there's a part of the play where the main character is drawing one of her like little Chuck Taylor shoes, and you draw it for 10 minutes and you're like, okay, this is, my best take at a shoe. This is the best I can do. And then you have to draw the same thing again in 5 minutes. And then you have to do it
Oh,
in 2 minutes. And then you have to do it in 20 seconds. And every time the more detail gets pared away and you have to focus on just creating like the simplest version of the thing. And that's how like a cartoon of something comes out. Like you're paring away all the stuff that seems at the time that seems essential, but then when you get down to it, you're drawing something really simple, but it still reads as a shoe, as a bird, as a, a pizza, like whatever it
right,
is.
right.
And I think that's how you get more comfortable drawing is like by learning to draw things quickly and to draw it all the time. So much of like working in comics is about volume. Like you're just drawing like panel after panel, page after
The
page.
repetition.
Exactly. Like you don't have time to be precious about all of your drawings. In a lot of ways, that takes the pressure off. And I think that's something that I like to emphasize in my classes and that I, maybe is reflective of how I draw comics pages. But yeah, that's that sort of thing where that is what I often talk to the playwright and the director about, and that kind of got incorporated into, I think, the final version of the production.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's gonna come across well. Just wrapping up here. What would you say you love most about being part of this production?
What I like about being part of this production is how much of a collaborative process it is because working in comics, unless you're part of a small team of like an inker and a colorist or whatever, it's a pretty solitary profession. A lot of it is just you making work alone at your desk, and then you put it out in the world. And,
Sure.
maybe, if you go to conventions, like maybe you'll talk to someone who's read your work in person, but there's not a lot of like physical, like one-to-one interaction.
Sure.
And plays, like dramatic productions, just aren't like that. You're constantly talking with, the other people in the like theater. You're constantly like making adjustments, like making negotiations. So, I have to work constantly with the main projectionist, whose job it is to make sure that all of the images are, being displayed properly. There's constantly, I'll be talking pretty soon with the main actors who will be doing some live drawing on stage, some helping them like get more comfortable drawing, which will be really fun. There's just a lot of like communication, like face-to-face communication. It's very different from the work that I typically do, and that's really invigorating. I'm really looking forward to that.
Congratulations on being a part of this, and excited for when all these things come to life for you
Yeah. Oh, it's
and
only
for
a month
Minneapolis.
away.
So thank you very much. Coming October 8th through November 10th at the Children Theaters Company at the Cargo Stage is drawing lessons. And involved with that is an illustrator and, well, just about everything in comics. A writer, teacher, cartoonist. And now, do you get a title with this?
I'm mainly illustrator.
Illustrator. Okay. Okay. And illustrator, Blue Delliquanti. Blue, thanks for taking the time and sharing with us about your great project here. And can't wait to raise some awareness, get them out there, and check it out.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to Blue Delliquanti. Thank you for all you're doing in the comic book industry and telling us about what you're doing in comics. You can follow Blue online at Blue Delliquanti on X, IG, Blue Sky, whichever way it goes, Mastodon, Pillow Fort, and Patreon, as well as at BlueDelliquanti.com. If you're in and around the Minneapolis area on October 8th through November 10th, you can score tickets for drawing lessons and possibly see Blue as well. You can get tickets at bit.ly/drawinglessonstix. Thanks for watching. Watch for our next episode spotlighting Gamal Hennessy.